When Dave Filoni was tasked with creating the Clone Wars TV series, he created several different characters for the show, including this young Togruta Padawan. At the time, he had no idea what the Clone Wars' central theme or plot would be about. That would come later when Filoni's own Jedi Master George Lucas joined and started mentoring him.
He says, well, in this character, and he points to the Padawan we had, and he says, let's give Anakin Skywalker a Padawan. And I was like, Anakin doesn't have Padawan. And he just looked at me and said, Anakin has a Padawan. And that was basically it. That's how Ahsoka came about.
The Clone Wars would be about many different things. It would showcase the arrogance of the Jedi, it would bring us inside of the Grand Army of the Republic and introduce us to individual clones, making us realize how unique each one of them were. And it would also show us how Anakin matures from the young Padawan in Episode 2, who runs face first into Sith lightning, to the much more mature and troubled individual we see in Episode 3. And the introduction of Ahsoka Tano plays a huge part in the character development of Anakin.
It would be interesting to see Anakin with a Padawan. And she was, a tough little teenager. She was sort of the student position, but she wouldn't let Anakin tell her anything. She'd question everything he asked her. She'd stand up to him, and sometimes she'd outdo him.
I have to admit, when I first saw Ahsoka, I was kind of annoyed by her presence.
When you watch the early episodes, she really feels like a teenager, being young and a little bit over the top.
She was arrogant and know-it-all, and I think a lot of us fans sympathized with Anakin's disbelief that he had to saddle this burden.
I'm at your service, Master Kenobi, but I'm afraid I've actually been assigned to Master Skywalker.
What? No. There must be some mistake. He's the one who wanted the Padawan.
It's almost like you and the boys are about to go on some awesome adventure and this snot-nosed kid suddenly comes out of nowhere and wants to tag along and ruin everything. And I think that's kind of the brilliance of Ahsoka. She started off as a brat, but through the course of 7 seasons slowly evolved into someone that fans not only began to respect, but also a character that became many fans' favorite. Which is why the Ahsoka TV series is about to happen 15 years later. I think this is a big moment for Dave Filoni. This is his character, and he's been mentored under George Lucas so long, I think now it's finally his time to step into the light. Now, what I'm going to say next is going to piss off some Star Wars fans, especially Anakin Skywalker fans, but I believe at the same time, Ahsoka Tano has also surpassed Anakin in many ways. Let me explain. I want to talk about the character's mentality before we talk about, midichlorian levels or natural talent. You see, I'm a huge 49ers fan. And many years ago, our team drafted this beast of an athlete named Aldon Smith at defensive end. In his rookie and sophomore year, he posted insane stats and got close to the sack record. He was so dominant at rushing the quarterback, he fundamentally changed how offenses played against us. But even if you are an NFL fan, there's a good chance you haven't heard of Aldon Smith, and that's because right after his rookie year, he got a DUI. And then he got stabbed at an altercation in his house, and he also had a felony possession of 3 assault weapons. The year after that, he got into an accident while under the influence and was forced into rehab, and then a year later, he got arrested by the TSA in some altercation at the airport. They said he muttered something about carrying a bomb. And basically, for the rest of his career, something would happen every year involving him and the police. He's probably lost out on tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. He could have had endorsements. He would have definitely been a Hall of Famer. And I think this shows us that if the mentality is not there, it doesn't matter how much talent you have. So there's a reason why Master Yoda placed Ahsoka specifically in Anakin's care and not in the care of someone like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yoda saw something in Ahsoka that reminded him greatly of Anakin when he was a youngling and had first joined the Order. Both individuals were brash and naturally confident, the result of their natural talents.
Skywalker's filthy, obnoxious little pet.
How nice of you. Tell you what, I'll give you a merciful death.
This is so wizard, Annie. I'm sure you'll do it this time.
Do what?
Finish the race, of course.
You've never won a race?
Well, not exactly.
Not even finished?
Kitster's right, I will this time.
Of course you will.
Confidence will get you extremely far in life, especially if you have the skills to match it. But at the same time, it can lead to individuals developing really nasty habits. In Anakin's case, his confidence led to him always winging things, no matter how difficult or complicated a challenge he was about to face.
Looks like I have to rescue you again, old man.
I knew you'd have a backup plan.
And Ahsoka in her earlier teenage years was like that as well.
Green color!
And when you put two very confident and arrogant individuals together, well, they'll completely butt heads, and that's exactly what happens with Anakin and Ahsoka for most of the first year of the war. It happened so much that it became well known amongst the rest of the Jedi Order.
At it again, are they? Again, Master? Let's just say that they have a penchant for playing loose with regulations and rules of command.
Listen to me.
Well, if you don't trust me, then maybe you should send me back.
Oh, don't tempt me, Snips.
Now, you might be thinking this is exactly the type of dynamic that Obi-Wan Kenobi had with Anakin when he was young, and I would say you're kind of correct. Anakin was a hothead as a Padawan. He had authority issues, but in his defense, he was more obedient than Ahsoka was and never talked back to Obi-Wan the way Snips would retort back to Anakin.
The youngling isn't with me.
Stop calling me that. You're stuck with me, Sky Guy.
What did you just call me? Don't get snippy with me, little one. You know, I don't even think you're old enough to be a Padawan.
Well, maybe I'm not, but Master Yoda thinks I am.
Well, you're not with Master Yoda now.
But what makes Anakin's training very different from Ahsoka's is the fact that Obi-Wan Kenobi didn't truly understand Anakin. And that's because his personality was very different to Anakin's. Obi-Wan Kenobi had his mischievous side, but he was also very cautious and always planned his moves carefully. More importantly, Obi-Wan was a model Jedi. He followed the rules and was beloved by the Council, and so when he told Anakin to not do something, Anakin often just felt ashamed, and he felt alienated from his master, who kind of represented the Jedi Council. And this does not lead to great results when you're trying to discipline someone or teach them lessons. A lot of times, if you just use stern words or the threat of punishment to teach someone a lesson, they'll only obey out of fear or disapproval and not truly understand why their behavior needs to be corrected in the first place. In order to truly teach someone a lesson, they have to accept that lesson themselves internally. Now, the opposite happens with Anakin and Ahsoka. Anakin at first would try to discipline Ahsoka for crossing the line, just like how Obi-Wan Kenobi would do to him. During the Battle of Ryloth, Ahsoka was in charge of the Republic fleet's fighter cover, and she ignored orders to abandon her attack run and return to the fleet, which ended up causing the Republic Navy heavy casualties.
Ahsoka, I am very disappointed in you. You not only disobeyed the Admiral, you disobeyed me.
I thought I could knock out those battleships, so when Master Obi-Wan arrived, he could get through.
I know you meant well, Snips, but there's a bigger picture that you're not aware of.
This is really just Obi-Wan Kenobi rubbing off of Anakin. There's a mix of sternness and also a bit of understanding. But in this case, the understanding was painfully real for Anakin, who has leapt forward into many situations without thinking and suffered the consequences. This is why Yoda probably assigned him an apprentice in the first place. He hoped that giving Anakin a Padawan would actually mellow him out and teach him to be a bit more responsible. Plus, someone like Ahsoka, who was hot-headed, probably reminded Anakin of himself. And at the same time, what really opened Ahsoka's eyes was not exactly Anakin just telling her to stop, being so reckless, but just watching her master fail because of his own recklessness.
So how are we gonna get over there?
Leave that to me.
I hope I don't have to learn that.
You have got to be careful. You never know what you're gonna run into.
Blasted Ahsoka, I told you to stay close to me.
I can't get much closer, Sky Guy.
Ahsoka realizes pretty early on that her own master's impatience has completely hindered his ability to be effective in combat on numerous occasions. And so before she was even an adult, Ahsoka already started dismantling her own biggest weakness, the same flaws she saw in her master that ultimately led to him falling to the dark side. And it wasn't just Anakin's emotions that got the better of him. It was his lack of critical thinking and his impulsiveness that led to him cutting Mace Windu's arm off and joining the dark side. He was outmaneuvered and outplayed in the last year of the war by a Sith Lord who understood that he was a reactionary person who could easily be fooled and misled. Ahsoka also had the luxury of being allowed to make horrendous mistakes that cost many lives at both the Battle of Ryloth and also the Battle of Felucia, and she was able to learn from those mistakes. She had the opportunity to be tutored by Senator Padme Amidala and see the inner workings of galactic politics. She would meet individuals like Mina Bonteri and her son, two separatists who changed her view of the so-called bad guys of the war. Ahsoka's teenage years during the Clone Wars greatly tested her and allowed her to mature and develop far quicker than a Jedi Padawan could have during times of peace. She also died once, which I guess is, life-changing. By the time Ahsoka is forced to leave the Jedi Order after being framed for the Jedi Temple bombing, she was ready to go out into the world and take care of herself despite not even being an adult. This would go on to help her survive those terrifying initial months after Order 66. Now, having said all of that, most Jedi younglings could not have enjoyed all of the lessons that Anakin could have offered them, or the lessons that the Clone Wars could have offered them, if they didn't have Ahsoka Tano's talent. Talent is still important. While Anakin had a giant heart and truly cared for the men beneath his command, he also tended to forget that most people, and by most I mean everyone, couldn't really keep up with his crazy antics. Whether it's leaping from one flying speeder to another while scaling up a cliff wall or zigzagging through enemy anti-air defenses in a Y-wing, Anakin's tendency to not look back got a lot of his men killed. If Ahsoka Tano didn't have the skills at least to stay a step behind Anakin, I don't think this mentorship would have worked. Either she would have died, permanently, or, Anakin would have realized that this Padawan was not worthy of his tutorship. Now, obviously, Ahsoka Tano isn't the chosen one, but that doesn't make her any less than Anakin, especially when you consider she is mentally stronger and smarter than him. Plus, she was always a badass from day one. When she was taken by a giant alien tiger monster from her mother as an infant, the entire village she was from thought she had been eaten. But later that day, she would actually return to her village riding that very monster that had taken her. It shows us that Ahsoka didn't just have a natural affinity with the Force, she was also incredibly powerful in the Force at a very young age. We used to have midichlorian counts and legends that determined how strong a Force user was. That's no longer a thing, but I believe that Ahsoka probably would have been in the same level as Obi-Wan Kenobi, Mace Windu, and Dooku. And while Anakin destroyed an entire droid ship at the age of 9, Ahsoka at the age of 14 was dueling extremely talented Sith like Asajj Ventress, taking on multiple IG-100 Magna Guard droids, and even survived an encounter with General Grievous. These are feats that many older and more talented Jedi Knights and Masters were not able to achieve or survive. And this was all before Ahsoka even adopted her eventual lightsaber style, which utilized 2 lightsabers. Ahsoka also would be responsible for defeating Maul and capturing him in single combat. And of course, when she's finally an adult and has a showdown with Vader, well, she proves to be quick enough to score a pretty nasty blow on Vader's helmet. Whether she'd be able to defeat Vader is a whole nother question. I mean, as far as we can tell, she tried to kill Vader by bringing the Jedi Temple down on top of both of them, sacrificing herself in the process. I guess you can call that a draw, but Ezra kind of screws up the timeline and grabs her before we can see what happens. Maybe there is a different timeline where we can actually see what happens, but as of now, that's not a thing. So does Ahsoka surpass Anakin? While she might not have the natural talent and power in the Force as Anakin does, it's hard to scale up such things, but I also have to point out that Anakin's reckless and emotional behavior ultimately caused massive damage to his body, which weakened him tremendously. Sure, the anger and hatred would go on to fuel him for the rest of his tortured life, but missing your limbs and having a completely damaged respiratory system is a big vulnerability. And while Vader's body continues to degrade because of his injuries and the use of dark side Force abilities, Ahsoka Tano only grows wiser and more powerful in the Force. And so I don't think the question is, will Ahsoka surpass Anakin as much as when will she? As long as she doesn't die, of course, permanently. So there you have it, guys. That is my analysis of Ahsoka Tano's development. Of course, we're going to go more in depth as the Ahsoka TV series comes out and we get a little bit of a better understanding of where she's at during this period of her life. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think, though. Has she surpassed Anakin? And if so, when? And also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. And as usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy.